Whether you're just getting started or trying to improve your current budget, there are a few things you should never overlook. In this video, we'll look at some of the most common budgeting mistakes and provide tips and strategies for avoiding them. Let's face it, we all have bills to pay. However, when creating a budget, it is critical not to overlook your monthly expenses. This may seem obvious, but trust me when I say that it's easier than you think to overlook recurring expenses like rent, utilities, and subscription services. When I first started budgeting, I was so focused on cutting back on discretionary expenses like eating out and shopping that I completely overlooked my monthly car payment and insurance premiums. It wasn't until I sat down and looked at my bills that I realized my mistake. And believe me, it was a wake-up call. By failing to account for these regular expenses, I was exposing myself to overspending and throwing my budget out of whack. So, if you're just getting started with budgeting, my advice is to go over your monthly bills and make sure you're budgeting for everything. Don't forget to account for unexpected expenses, such as car maintenance or medical bills, which can easily derail your budget if you're not prepared. Consider using a budgeting app or software to keep track of your expenses to make it easier. Many of these apps allow you to connect your accounts and track your spending automatically, making it simple to see where your money is going each month. You'll be well on your way to creating a budget that works for you if you're proactive and keep track of your expenses. Now, we are all aware that life is unpredictable. You will spend more money on groceries and entertainment some months than others. That is why, when creating your budget, it is critical not to underestimate your variable expenses. This is a typical mistake that I see many people make. They set a fixed amount for their grocery and entertainment budgets only to discover that they blew through it within the first week of the month. For example, I used to believe that I could live on $100 per month for groceries, but I quickly discovered that this was not the case. I enjoy cooking and experimenting with new recipes, so I was constantly purchasing new ingredients and spending more than I had planned. Similarly, I used to believe that I could keep a strict entertainment budget, only to find myself constantly saying yes to friend invitations and overspending on outings. So, my advice to you is to be realistic and allow for some wiggle room in your variable expenses. Track your spending for a few months to get a better understanding of your spending habits, and then adjust your budget accordingly. Don't forget to leave room for unexpected expenses, such as a surprise birthday gift or a last-minute dinner invitation. Remember that the goal of budgeting is not to deprive yourself of the things you enjoy, but rather to be intentional with your spending and live within your means. Accounting for variable expenses and allowing for some wiggle room will allow you to create a budget that is both realistic and long-term. Next, don't overlook the importance of building an emergency fund. Life, as we all know, can be unpredictable. Unexpected expenses, whether it's a car repair or an unexpected medical expense, can hit us hard and leave us struggling to make ends meet. That is why it is important not to overlook the importance of creating an emergency fund. An emergency fund is a separate account into which you can dip when unexpected expenses arise. It's a safety net that can help you weather financial storms, while also providing peace of mind. But how much should you put aside for an emergency fund? According to financial experts, you should save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in an easily accessible account, such as a high-yield savings account. Now, I understand that building an emergency fund can be intimidating, especially if you live paycheck to paycheck, but believe me when I say it's useful. Consider this: if you don't have an emergency fund and an unexpected expense arises, you may be forced to use high-interest credit cards or loans to cover the cost. This can trap you in a debt cycle that is difficult to break. So, start small and gradually increase your emergency fund. Look for ways to reduce your spending, such as cooking at home rather than eating out or canceling unnecessary subscriptions. Put any extra money you have into your emergency fund until you reach your target. Remember that creating an emergency fund is a continuous process. It necessitates consistent effort and dedication. However, by doing so, you will be protecting yourself from financial hardship and preparing for a more secure financial future. Creating a budget is not about just paying your bills and making ends meet. Setting and prioritizing financial goals is also important. Whether you're saving for a down payment on a house, paying off debt, or putting money aside for retirement, it's important to prioritize these goals and allocate your money accordingly. However, balancing short-term expenses with long-term goals is not always easy. We all have bills to pay and obligations to fill, and it can be tempting to prioritize short-term needs over long-term financial health. However, it's important to remember that by focusing on our long-term objectives, we can actually improve our short-term financial situation. Assume you're attempting to pay off credit card debt. It may be tempting to only make the minimum monthly payments and use the extra money to cover short-term expenses. However, this will only prolong your debt and cost you more money in interest charges in the long run. Instead, Prioritize debt repayment as soon as possible, even if it means reducing short-term expenses. This will help you save money and improve your overall financial health in the long run. The same logic applies to other financial objectives, such as saving for a down payment on a house or establishing a retirement fund. You'll be setting yourself up for a more secure financial future if you prioritize these goals and spend your money accordingly. Remember that creating a budget is not about just making ends meet. It's all about determining and prioritizing your financial goals, and then splitting your money accordingly. You will be taking control of your finances and preparing for a more secure financial future by doing so. By avoiding common budgeting mistakes and prioritizing your goals, you can create a plan that works for you and helps you achieve financial freedom. And if you're struggling with credit card debt, click on the video you see on your screen for more tips and strategies to reduce your debt and take control of your finance.